Betrayed virgin escapes into a fixed marriage with a stranger. He turns out to be a tech-wealthy CEO. Maya collapsed onto the couch, words tumbling out between sobs. The betrayal. The basement. The way Marcus had looked at her, like she was an inconvenience rather than his bride. Have you ever had your entire future destroyed by the people you trusted most? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. The tech billionaire stood in his empty mansion, holding a wedding ring that cost more than most people's homes, staring at a note that would destroy everything he thought he controlled. The girl he married for convenience had vanished, but not before discovering the truth that would bring him to his knees. What she found in his locked study wasn't just evidence of his deception. It was proof that their entire marriage was built on a lie that could cost him his empire. Have you ever wondered what happens when a person you underestimate becomes the one who holds your entire future in their hands? Have you ever been chosen for all the wrong reasons? Have you ever discovered that someone saw you as weak when you were actually their greatest threat? This is the story of a Southern church girl who was supposed to be easy to control, and the billionaire who learned too late that still waters run deeper than any ocean. Stay with me as we discover how a marriage built on manipulation became a love story that neither of them saw coming. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. She found him in the church basement 3 days before her wedding. Her fiancé and her cousin tangled together like a prayer she'd never learned to say. Maya Davis stood frozen in the doorway of Mount Calvary Baptist Church, her white dress fitting hanging from her trembling hands. The Mississippi heat pressed against the stained glass windows as her world crumbled in the space between one heartbeat and the next. Marcus! Her voice came out as a whisper, but it cut through their passion like a blade. Her cousin Jessica scrambled for her clothes while Marcus, the man she'd saved herself for, the man she was supposed to marry on Saturday, couldn't even look her in the eye. Maya, I can explain. Explain. The dress slipped from her fingers, pooling white silk on the basement floor. 3 days, Marcus. 3 days before our wedding. The drive home blurred past cotton fields and kudzu vines. Her hands shook on the steering wheel as she tried to process what she'd seen. 24 years old and still untouched. Still believing that waiting meant something. Still believing that love was sacred. Her mama's house sat quiet in the afternoon heat. Inside, the wedding gifts covered every surface. China, crystal, silver picture frames waiting for photos that would never exist. Baby girl, what's wrong? Her Aunt Patricia looked up from addressing invitations, her church hat perfectly positioned despite the heat. Maya collapsed onto the couch, words tumbling out between sobs. The betrayal. The basement. The way Marcus had looked at her, like she was an inconvenience rather than his bride. Aunt Patricia's face hardened. That boy never deserved you anyway. The whole church knows by now. Everyone's talking. I can't show my face anywhere. You don't have to. Patricia's voice carried something Maya had never heard before. Calculation. I know someone. A good Christian man in Seattle. Successful. Respectful. Looking for a wife. Maya stared at her aunt. You want me to marry a stranger? I want you to have options, baby. You're beautiful, pure, raised right. Some men appreciate that. This man, he needs a wife quickly. His daddy's dying, left some conditions in his will. The words hung in the humid air like a lifeline or a noose. Maya couldn't tell which. He's wealthy, Maya. Really wealthy. Tech money. He could give you everything Marcus never could. Through the window, Maya could see her mama's garden wilting in the heat. Everything in Jackson, Mississippi suddenly felt small and suffocating. The whispers would follow her everywhere. The pity, the shame. Have you ever had your entire future destroyed by the people you trusted most? What would you do if your family's solution felt like a punishment? Tell me in the comments. What's his name? Maya heard herself ask. Cole Harrington. And honey, he's got more money than you could spend in 3 lifetimes. When her aunt mentioned the man in Seattle, wealthy, respectable, available, Maya should have asked why someone that perfect needed a wife so desperately. Instead, she said yes to a stranger, not knowing she was walking into a trap disguised as salvation. The contract arrived with a plane ticket and 3 words that should have terrified her. No questions asked. Maya sat at her mama's kitchen table, staring at documents that felt more like a business deal than a marriage proposal. The letterhead read Harrington Industries in silver letters that seemed to gleam with money she'd never seen. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number, Seattle area code. Miss Davis? This is Cole Harrington. His voice hit her like expensive whiskey, smooth, controlled, with an edge that made her skin warm despite the kitchen's broken air conditioning. Deep enough to feel in her chest, careful enough to hide whatever he was really thinking. Mr. Harrington. She gripped the phone tighter. I wasn't expecting you to call directly. A pause. When he spoke again, something in his tone made her pulse quicken. I prefer handling important matters personally. Did you review the documents? Important matters. Not marriage. Not partnership. Matters. I did, but I have questions. The contract is comprehensive. Everything you need to know is outlined clearly. Maya's temper flared. Back home, men didn't interrupt women, especially not in that tone. Sir, with respect, I'm not signing anything without understanding what I'm agreeing to. Silence stretched across 3,000 miles. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed, low and genuine, like he'd surprised himself. Fair enough. Ask your questions, Miss Davis. Why me? Why not someone from Seattle? Someone you actually know? Because I need someone who understands commitment. Someone who won't complicate this arrangement with unrealistic expectations. The word stung, but Maya pressed on. And what exactly are your expectations? Discretion, respect, a wife in name who won't interfere with my business or personal life. In return, you'll have financial security, a home, and your independence. Her independence, as if marrying a stranger for money was somehow liberating. There's a time limit mentioned. 6 months. My father's will requires marriage before my 35th birthday. That gives us exactly 37 days. 37 days. Like an expiration date on milk. Mr. Harrington, I need to ask, have you ever been married before? The pause lasted so long she thought the call had dropped. Yes, my wife died 3 years ago. The words carried weight that made her chest tight. Grief lived in those syllables, carefully controlled, but unmistakably real. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. Miss Davis, I need an answer by tomorrow. The plane ticket is for Thursday. Seattle's skyline pierced the clouds like glass teeth as her flight descended 2 days later, each building a monument to ambition that made her small-town dreams feel like whispers in a hurricane. Through the airplane window, Puget Sound stretched gray and endless, nothing like the muddy Mississippi River she'd grown up beside. Would you marry a stranger to escape your past? When does desperation become courage? Share your thoughts below. The driver held a sign with her name, but as they pulled up to the glass mansion overlooking Puget Sound, Maya realized she'd traded one prison for another. This one just had better views and more dangerous secrets. His mansion had rules posted in every room, but the most important one wasn't written anywhere. Don't fall for the girl you're using. Maya stepped out of the black car and into a world that didn't seem real. The house rose from manicured grounds like something from a magazine, all clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows that reflected the Seattle sky. Money whispered from every perfectly placed stone, every architectural angle designed to impress and intimidate. The front door opened before she could knock. Cole Harrington stood there in person for the first time, and Maya's breath caught. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that looked like he'd been running his fingers through it. His eyes were gray as the sound behind his house, and they studied her with an intensity that made her feel exposed. Miss Davis, Mr. Harrington. He stepped aside to let her pass, and she caught his scent, something expensive and clean that had nothing to do with cologne and everything to do with power. The house echoed with the kind of silence that money buys, pristine, cold, and utterly devoid of anything resembling a home. White walls, black furniture, art that probably cost more than her mama's house. Everything perfect, everything empty. Your room is upstairs. First door on the right. He handed her a folder. House rules, Wi-Fi password, my schedule. We won't see much of each other before the ceremony. Maya flipped through the pages. Lists of what she could and couldn't touch, eat, change. Like she was a house guest who might steal the silver. This feels more like a business contract than a home. Because that's what it is. His voice stayed level, but something flickered in those gray eyes. I thought your aunt explained the situation. She explained that you needed a wife. She didn't mention I'd be treated like an employee. Cole's jaw tightened. You'll have everything you need. Freedom to come and go, access to the car, credit cards for anything reasonable. I'm not a prison warden, Miss Davis. Just a man who puts rules on refrigerator magnets. For a second, his mouth almost smiled. Almost. The kitchen staff knows your dietary restrictions. Dinner is at 7 if you'd like to join me. If not, they'll send something to your room. He turned to leave, and Maya called after him. Mr. Harrington? Cole, why are you doing this? Really? He stopped, his back still to her. When he turned around, something in his face had shifted. Less controlled, more human. Because I love my wife more than my own life. And when she died, she made me promise not to let my father's bitterness destroy what we built together. His voice roughened. This company employs 12,000 people. I won't let them lose their jobs because I couldn't find a way to meet a dead man's requirements. Have you ever walked into a situation where you immediately knew the rules were designed to keep you powerless? How did you reclaim your agency? That night, as she unpacked her single suitcase in the guest room, Maya found a photo hidden in the nightstand drawer. Cole with a woman who looked nothing like her, their faces soft with the kind of love that makes promises. The woman was dead, according to the newspaper clipping beneath it. She wasn't his first wife. She was his replacement, chosen specifically because she could never measure up to a ghost. Maya stared at the photograph until her eyes blurred. Dr. Sarah Chin Harrington smiled up from the newspaper clipping, beautiful and brilliant in surgical scrubs, her arm around Cole at some charity event. The headline read, Tech Titan's wife dies after brave cancer battle. The article painted a picture Maya could never compete with. Sarah had been a pediatric surgeon who volunteered at free clinics. She spoke 4 languages. She'd graduated summa cum laude from Harvard Medical School. She'd saved children's lives while building a fortune alongside her husband. Maya set the photo down with shaking hands. No wonder Cole's voice had gone cold when he mentioned his first wife. No wonder he'd chosen a simple church girl from Mississippi who'd never been anywhere or done anything important. She wasn't meant to be Sarah's equal. She was meant to be invisible. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Cole's voice came through the door. Maya, dinner's ready. The dining room could have seated 20, but only 2 places were set at the far end of a table that stretched like a runway. Cole had changed into jeans and a gray sweater that made his eyes look like storm clouds. More human than the businessman who'd greeted her earlier, but still carefully distant. You found the photo. It wasn't a question. Maya's cheeks burned. I wasn't snooping. It was just there. Sarah picked out that guest room furniture. Said it felt welcoming. He cut into his steak with surgical precision. I should have moved her things before you arrived. Tell me about her. Cole's fork paused halfway to his mouth. What? Because I'm sleeping in her house, sitting at her table, about to take her name. I think I deserve to know who I'm replacing. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. You're not replacing anyone, aren't I? Maya leaned forward. You needed a wife. You could have married anyone. Rich socialites, successful businesswomen, probably half the single women in Seattle. But you chose me. A nobody from Mississippi with no education, no career, no connections. Maya, because I can't compare to her, can I? I'm safe. Forgettable. I won't make you feel anything you don't want to feel. Cole set down his fork, his control slipping. You don't know what you're talking about. Then tell me. Tell me why you really chose me. The silence stretched until Maya thought he wouldn't answer. Then he spoke, his voice rough as sandpaper. Because you needed saving, and I needed someone who couldn't save themselves. Someone who'd be grateful enough to stay in the shadows. His eyes met hers across the table. Someone who wouldn't make me forget that loving someone that much once was enough for a lifetime. The honesty hit her like a physical blow. But underneath the pain, something else stirred. Something that felt like a challenge. How do you compete with a perfect memory? Have you ever been someone's second choice and found the strength to become their first? Comment below. The marriage ceremony was scheduled for tomorrow, a cold transaction in a courthouse that would make Cole a billionaire and Maya a stranger in her own life. But as she stood in his dead wife's closet, trying on clothes that would never fit right, she made a decision that would change everything. They promised to love, honor, and cherish. But the only truth in that courtroom was that they were both excellent liars. The King County Courthouse buzzed with the business of other people's lives. Divorces, adoptions, civil disputes, and one fake marriage that would make a billionaire out of a broken man and a stranger out of a Southern girl who deserved better. Maya smoothed the navy dress she'd bought at Nordstrom with Cole's credit card. Nothing like the white gown that still hung in her mama's closet back in Jackson. But it would do for a ceremony that was more business merger than sacred vow. Cole appeared beside her in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her mama's monthly rent. Clean-shaven, controlled. Every inch the successful CEO, except for his hands. They trembled slightly as he straightened his tie. "You look beautiful." The words sounded surprised, like he hadn't expected them to be true. "Thank you." She studied his face, looking for cracks in the armor. "You look nervous." "I don't get nervous. Everyone gets nervous on their wedding day, even fake ones." His mouth twitched. "Is that what this is?" Before she could answer, the clerk called their names. Time to make it legal. The courthouse marriage felt like signing divorce papers in reverse. All the legal binding with none of the joy, witnessed by strangers who were paid to forget what they'd seen. The judge, a tired-looking woman with kind eyes, read through the ceremony like she'd done it 1,000 times before. "Do you, Cole Michael Harrington, take Maya Elizabeth Davis to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Cole's voice was steady. "I do." "And do you, Maya Elizabeth Davis, take Cole Michael Harrington to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Maya looked at this man she barely knew, this stranger who'd offered her an escape wrapped in legal documents and prenups. His gray eyes held something she couldn't read. Hope, maybe, or fear, or both. "I do." "You may kiss the bride." The required kiss lasted longer than planned. Cole's lips were warm, gentle, and for a moment that stretched like eternity, Maya forgot this was pretend. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheek, and she felt something shift between them. Something that had nothing to do with contracts or convenience. When they broke apart, both were breathing harder than they should have been. "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Harrington." Mrs. Harrington. The name felt foreign on her tongue, like speaking a language she'd never learned. Outside the courthouse, Seattle's afternoon drizzle misted around them. Cole's business associates waited with congratulations that felt more like condolences, their eyes assessing her like a questionable investment. "Welcome to the family," one of them said, though his smile never reached his eyes. "What's worse, marrying for love and losing it, or marrying without love and finding it? Have you ever made a practical decision that became emotional? Tell me your story." The ride back to the house was silent, except for the rain against the windows. Maya stared at the gold band on her finger. Simple, elegant, and completely meaningless. On their wedding night, Cole disappeared into his study for hours while Maya sat alone in silk pajamas she'd bought for a different man. When he finally emerged, his words cut deeper than any rejection. "This doesn't change anything between us. You're safe here, but don't mistake business for anything else." She'd been invisible her whole life until the night she decided to make him see her. Consequences be damned. 3 days of marriage had passed in polite silence. Cole left early, returned late, and treated Maya like expensive furniture. Useful, attractive, but not worth conversation. She ate breakfast alone, explored the empty house alone, and went to bed alone while her husband worked in his study until midnight. But Maya Davis, now Maya Harrington, had never been good at staying quiet when something burned inside her chest. She found him on the balcony at midnight, Seattle's lights reflecting in his whiskey glass like fallen stars, his shoulders carrying the weight of an empire he'd never wanted. The rain had stopped, leaving the air clean and electric. "Can't sleep either." She stepped onto the deck wearing one of Sarah's robes she'd found in the closet. It was too big, too elegant, but it smelled like expensive perfume instead of sadness. Cole turned like a man expecting another ghost. His eyes widened when he saw her, really saw her, for maybe the first time since she'd arrived. You should be sleeping. Hard to sleep when your husband treats you like a secret he's ashamed of. He set down his glass. Maya, no. She moved closer, bare feet silent on wet stone. You get to talk now. For 3 days, I've followed your rules, stayed in my lane, played the perfect invisible wife. But I'm tired of being a ghost in my own marriage. This isn't a real marriage, isn't it? She was close enough now to see the exhaustion in his eyes, the stubble he'd forgotten to shave. We sign papers. We wear rings. We live in the same house. Seems pretty real to me. You don't understand. Then help me understand. Her voice gentled. Tell me why you're out here drinking alone on your wedding night instead of, I don't know, celebrating, talking to your wife, acting like a human being instead of a robot. Cole's laugh was bitter. Because human beings make mistakes. They let people in, they fall in love and lose everything when it's taken away. So you decided never to feel anything again? I decided to protect what matters. My company, my employees, your what? Your heart. Maya stepped closer, close enough to smell his cologne mixed with whiskey and rain. Cole, what happened to Sarah was terrible, but she's gone and you're still here, still alive, still capable of what? When she touched his shoulder, he turned like a man expecting another ghost. Instead, he found warm fingers and warmer eyes. And for the first time since she'd arrived, he saw her, not as a contract or convenience, but as a woman who'd been watching him with quiet intensity, of letting someone care about you. The words hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they should cross. Cole's hand came up to cover hers where it rested on his shoulder. Maya, you don't know what you're asking. I'm not asking for anything. I'm just here, present, real. She stepped closer. When was the last time someone saw you as more than a bank account or a business deal? When was the last time someone really saw you? Not your function or purpose, but you as a complete person? Share that moment below. As they stood closer than they'd ever been, her hand still on his shoulder, Cole whispered words that changed everything. I didn't choose you because you were weak. I chose you because I was a coward. Before she could ask what he meant, his phone rang. The call that would destroy both their carefully constructed lives. The phone call that shattered their wedding night came from the one person who knew the truth about why Cole Harrington really needed a wife. Harrington. Cole's voice shifted into business mode as he answered, but his eyes stayed on Maya's face. Through the phone speaker, a man's voice crackled with satisfaction. Congratulations on your marriage, Cole. Very practical choice. Maya watched Cole's face transform from the man who'd almost kissed her to the CEO who'd built walls higher than his skyscrapers. His free hand dropped from where it had been moving toward her face. Marcus, it's late. Never too late for family business, especially when that business involves a very interesting marriage certificate that crossed my desk today. Marcus, Maya's stomach dropped. Marcus Chun, Sarah's brother, Cole's business partner, and a man whose voice carried enough poison to kill whatever had been growing between them on this balcony. What do you want? Just to remind you that some of us remember what love looks like. And this arrangement, isn't it? Cole turned away from Maya, but she could see his reflection in the glass doors. His jaw was tight, his knuckles white around the phone. My personal life isn't your concern. It is when it affects Harrington Industries, when it dishonors my sister's memory. Marcus's voice hardened. You think I don't know why you married her? The will clause, the timeline, the desperate search for someone manageable. Maya's breath caught. Through the study's glass doors, she watched Cole's face transform from the man who'd almost kissed her to the CEO who'd built walls higher than his skyscrapers. You're out of line. Am I? Tell me, Cole, does your new wife know she was handpicked because her background makes her easy to control? Does she know you spent weeks researching small-town girls who'd be grateful enough to stay quiet? The words hit Maya like physical blows. Easy to control. Grateful enough to stay quiet. She pressed herself against the wall outside his study, heart racing from what she was hearing. She'll never find out. Cole's voice was ice-cold calculation. Southern church girls don't ask hard questions. The silence that followed was deafening. Maya's world tilted on its axis as the man she'd been starting to trust revealed exactly what he thought of her. "Just remember," Marcus continued, "I'm watching. One wrong move, one hint that this marriage is anything other than what you claim, and I'll make sure the board knows exactly how far you're willing to go for control of this company." The call ended. Cole stood motionless in his study, phone still pressed to his ear like he couldn't believe what had just happened. Maya slipped away from the door, her bare feet silent on marble floors. In the guest room, her room, she sat on the bed and stared at her wedding ring. Such a pretty lie. Have you ever learned something about someone that made you see them completely differently? Did it push you away or pull you closer? Comment your experience. As Cole ended the call, Maya pressed herself against the wall outside his study, heart racing from what she'd heard. He hadn't just married her for inheritance. He'd researched her, chosen her specifically because her background made her manageable. But what he'd said next made her blood run cold. She'll never find out. Southern church girls don't ask hard questions. He'd calculated everything except the moment when his convenient wife would stop being convenient. Maya didn't sleep. She sat by her window watching Seattle's skyline blur through tears she refused to shed, turning Cole's words over in her mind like broken glass. Easy to control, grateful enough to stay quiet. Southern church girls don't ask hard questions. By morning, the tears had burned away, leaving something harder behind. She found Cole in his study at 7 a.m., already dressed for work, already hiding behind his computer screen like nothing had happened. He looked up when she entered, and something in her face made him straighten. "Maya, I thought you'd still be sleeping. Hard asleep when you discover your husband thinks you're too stupid to figure out his lies." Cole's fingers froze over his keyboard. "What are you talking about?" "Your phone call last night. With Marcus. You know, the one where you discussed how manageable I am." She moved closer to his desk, and he actually leaned back in his chair. "The one where you assured him that Southern church girls don't ask hard questions?" The color drained from Cole's face. "You were listening. I was standing right outside that door when you explained exactly why you chose me. Not because I was special, not because I needed saving, because you thought I was weak enough to control." Cole stood, his hands raised like she was a dangerous animal. "Maya, let me explain." "Explain what?" "That you spent weeks researching girls from small towns because you needed someone grateful and quiet? That I was chosen like a product from a catalog?" She stood in his study like a storm that had found its way indoors. All quiet power and barely contained lightning, making his steel and glass fortress feel suddenly fragile. That's exactly what it was. Maya's voice stayed level, but her eyes blazed. "You married a Southern church girl because you thought she'd be grateful and quiet. But you forgot something important about how we're raised, Cole. Maya, we're also raised to know our worth." She leaned across his desk, close enough that he could smell her perfume, something warm and southern that had no business in his cold corporate world. "And we're raised to fight for what's right." Cole's careful control cracked. "You don't understand the pressure I was under. The company, the employees, the timeline. I understand perfectly. You needed a wife fast, so you found someone desperate enough to say yes and simple enough not to ask questions." Maya straightened. "But here's what you didn't count on. I'm done being grateful. I'm done being quiet. And I'm definitely done being manageable." The silence stretched between them like a battlefield. Cole's gray eyes searched her face, seeing something he'd clearly never expected to find there. "What do you want from me?" "I want honesty. I want respect. And I want to renegotiate our arrangement." "Renegotiate? If we're going to be married, even fake married, then we're going to be partners. Equal partners. No more rules about what I can touch or where I can go. No more treating me like hired help. When was the last time you surprised someone who underestimated you? How did it feel to prove them wrong? Share your victory below." Cole's response surprised them both. Instead of defensiveness or apologies, he smiled, really smiled, for the first time since she'd known him. "I was wrong about you," he said, and something in his voice made her knees weak. "The question is, what are you going to do about it?" She'd been his pawn for exactly 8 days. Until the night she decided to play chess with a master and win. "What I'm going to do," Maya said, moving around his desk until she was close enough to see the gold flecks in his gray eyes, "is show you exactly who you married." Cole's breath caught as she approached. This wasn't the quiet church girl he'd expected. This was a woman who'd found her power and wasn't afraid to use it. "Maya, tomorrow you have a board meeting. I know because I read your calendar." She placed her hands flat on his desk, leaning close. "I'm coming with you." "Absolutely not." "Why?" "Afraid they'll see that your manageable little wife has opinions." Cole stood, but instead of backing away, Maya stepped closer. Close enough that he had to look down at her. Close enough that the space between them crackled with electricity. "The board meeting isn't a place for what? For wives? For women? For people you think aren't smart enough to understand business?" Maya's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow felt more dangerous than shouting. "Were you afraid they'll realize you married someone who might actually be your equal?" Something shifted in Cole's eyes. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. "You have no idea what you're asking." "Then tell me. Explain why your wife can't attend a meeting about the company she helped you inherit." Maya stepped closer, backing him against his desk. "Unless you're ashamed of me." "I'm not ashamed of you." "Prove it." The challenge hung between them like a gauntlet thrown down. Cole's hands found her waist before he could stop himself, and Maya felt victory surge through her veins. "If we're going to be partners," she whispered, close enough that her breath touched his lips, "then treat me like one." "Partners." "In everything." The boardroom fell silent as Maya entered beside Cole the next morning in a dress that cost more than most cars. His credit card purchase, her choice of battlefield armor. She'd chosen black because it meant business, fitted because it meant confidence, and she'd walked into that room like she owned it. 20 men in expensive suits turned to stare. 20 sets of eyes assessing her thrift store roots and small-town background. But Maya had learned something growing up poor in Mississippi. When you've got nothing to lose, you've got everything to gain. "Gentlemen," Cole's voice carried new authority. "I'd like you to meet my wife, Maya Harrington." The murmurs started immediately. Cole's assistant had clearly spread the word about the sudden marriage, the mysterious bride from nowhere, the convenient timing. Maya smiled the same smile she'd used to charm church ladies into buying her mama's pies at bake sales. "Sweet as honey, sharp as a blade. Pleasure to meet you all. I'm looking forward to learning more about the company my husband built." After the meeting, Cole followed her to his office, closing the door behind them. That was... He paused, searching for words. Unexpected, impressive. She backed him against his desk, close enough that he could smell her perfume. Something warm and southern that had no business in his cold corporate world, but somehow made everything feel more alive. "If we're going to be partners," she whispered, "then treat me like one." His hands found her waist before he could stop himself. "Have you ever had to demand the respect you deserved? How did you claim your seat at the table? Tell me your power moved below." As they stood there, his hands spanning her waist, her palms flat against his chest, Cole made an admission that changed everything. "I've never wanted to lose control until I met you." Before she could respond, his assistant knocked. The private investigator had arrived with information about Maya that would test everything they just discovered about each other. Every woman has secrets, but hers had the power to destroy the empire he'd built on lies. The private investigator's folder sat between them like unexploded ordnance. 40 pages of Maya's life reduced to facts that missed every truth that mattered. Cole's hands shook slightly as he opened it, and Maya watched his face change with each page he read. "Your aunt." His voice was flat. "She's not just a church lady." Maya's stomach dropped. "What did you find?" "Patricia Davis has connections to Marcus Chun. They've been in contact for months." Cole looked up from the papers, his gray eyes dark with something between anger and betrayal. "She didn't arrange this marriage to save you from scandal, Maya. She arranged it to destroy me." The words hit her like cold water. "That's impossible. Marcus has been trying to buy out my shares for years. He never forgave me for marrying his sister, never believed I deserved the company we built together." Cole's voice hardened. "Your aunt fed him information about you. Your background, your vulnerabilities, your desperation after Marcus, the other Marcus, cheated. Maya sank into the chair across from his desk. She knew you'd choose me because I seemed weak. No. Cole came around the desk, kneeling beside her chair. She knew I'd choose you because you were exactly what I thought I needed. Someone who wouldn't complicate my life. But I have complicated it. Yes. His hand found hers, in the best possible way. Maya stared at their joined hands, his wedding ring catching the Seattle sunlight streaming through his office windows. There's more, isn't there? Cole nodded, his jaw tight. Your aunt has been documenting everything. Our conversations, your arrival, the wedding. She's building a case that our marriage is fraudulent. To steal your company. To prove I violated the terms of my father's will. If the marriage is deemed fake, the inheritance clause becomes void. Marcus gets control. Maya felt the weight of manipulation settling around her like chains. Used by her fiancé, used by her aunt, used by Cole himself. When would she stop being a pawn in other people's games? Maya. Cole's voice was gentle. I need you to know something. Yes, I chose you because I thought you'd be safe. Easy, but I was wrong about everything else. What do you mean? You're not weak. You're not manageable. And you're definitely not safe. His thumb traced circles on her palm. You're the strongest person I've ever met. And you scare me more than losing everything I've worked for. The honesty in his voice made her chest tight. Cole, I'm falling for you. The words came out rough, like they'd been torn from somewhere deep. I swore I'd never let anyone in again. And here you are, rewriting every rule I made to protect myself. What would you do if someone investigated your past? Would you run or trust them with your truth? Share your thoughts on privacy versus transparency. As Maya finished processing everything, her aunt's betrayal, Marcus's manipulation, the web of lies they were both caught in, Cole's response wasn't what she expected. Instead of anger at being deceived, he laughed, a sound she'd never heard from him. So we're both liars, he said, pulling her closer. I guess that makes us even. In business, hostile takeovers are about power, but in marriage, surrender is about trust. Maya found herself pressed against Cole's chest, his arms around her like he was afraid she might disappear. The investigation folders scattered across his desk, but neither of them cared about the papers anymore. What mattered was this moment. Two people who'd been playing roles finally being real with each other. We need a plan, Maya said against his shirt, breathing in his scent. Marcus and my aunt aren't going to stop. I know, Cole's voice rumbled in his chest. But first, I need to ask you something. She pulled back to look at him. What? Do you want to stay married to me? Really married, not just the contract version. The question hung between them like everything they'd been dancing around for days. Maya studied his face. The careful control was gone, replaced by something raw and hopeful that made her heart race. Are you asking because you need me for the company, or because you want me? I'm asking because I can't imagine my life without you in it. His hands cupped her face. I'm asking because you're the strongest, smartest, most challenging woman I've ever met. And I was an idiot to think I could keep you at arm's length. Maya's breath caught. Cole, I'm asking because I'm falling in love with you, and that terrifies me more than losing everything else combined. The words she'd been afraid to hope for hung in the air between them. Maya reached up to trace his jaw, feeling the tension there. Yes, she whispered. To all of it. Yes. When he kissed her, it wasn't careful or controlled. It was desperate and hungry and full of everything they'd been holding back. Maya melted against him, her hands fisting in his shirt as he backed her against his desk. Maya. Her name sounded like a prayer on his lips. Are you sure? Instead of answering with words, she reached for his tie, pulling him closer. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. They worked side by side in his study until dawn, Seattle's skyline shifting from black to gray to gold, their marriage finally becoming what neither had expected, a team. Maya's sharp mind cut through legal documents while Cole's business experience mapped out their strategy. If we can prove Marcus and your aunt conspired to manipulate both of us, Cole said, his hand finding hers across the papers, we can turn this around. Make them the criminals instead of us. Exactly, He lifted their joined hands to his lips, pressing a kiss to her wedding ring. But it means fighting dirty. Are you ready for that? Maya thought about her aunt's betrayal, Marcus's threats, all the people who tried to use her weakness against her. But she wasn't weak anymore. She was a Harrington now, and Harringtons didn't back down for fights. I grew up poor in Mississippi, Cole. I know how to fight dirty. When he carried her to his bedroom, not the guest room she'd occupied, but his sanctuary, every touch was a question she answered with sighs. Are you sure? He whispered against her neck. I've never been more sure of anything, she breathed, and meant it completely. What's the difference between being chosen and choosing? Between being needed and being wanted? Comment below about the moment you knew you were truly seen. As they lay together afterward, Maya's head on his chest, Cole whispered 3 words that changed everything. Not, I love you, but something that meant more, I trust you. Neither of them knew that in 12 hours, that trust would be tested by the one person who could destroy them both. The person who betrayed them wasn't a stranger with a grudge. It was family with a secret that could destroy everything they'd built. Maya woke to the sound of voices downstairs. Cole's arm tightened around her automatically, his body going tense even in sleep. Through the bedroom windows, Seattle's morning light painted everything gold and peaceful, but the voices carried up from the living room like storm clouds. Cole. Maya shook him gently. Someone's here. He was instantly alert, years of business training kicking in. The housekeeper doesn't come until noon. They dressed quickly, Cole in yesterday's shirt, Maya in one of his oversized sweaters that fell to her thighs. As they crept downstairs, the voices became clearer. 2 people talking in low, urgent tones. Maya's blood turned to ice when she recognized the first voice. The girl's more trouble than we anticipated, Aunt Patricia was saying. She's not playing along like she was supposed to. I told you she wouldn't be as easy to control as you promised. Marcus Chin's voice carried irritation and something else. Worry. Cole's already putting her name on company documents. Maya grabbed Cole's arm, her nails digging into his skin. Her aunt was here, in their house, talking to Marcus like they'd been partners all along. She's falling for him, Patricia continued. And worse, he's falling for her. This was supposed to be temporary. It will be temporary. Marcus's voice turned cold. I have photos of their wedding. Courthouse, no family, obviously arranged. Combined with the timeline and the will requirements, it's enough to prove fraud. Cole's jaw clenched, but Maya placed a warning hand on his chest. They needed to hear this. What about the girl? What about her? Once the marriage is invalidated, she goes back to Mississippi with nothing. Maybe we'll throw her some cash to keep quiet. Maya's vision blurred with rage. Her own aunt talking about discarding her like garbage once she'd served her purpose. And Cole loses everything. The company, the inheritance, his precious wife. They'll be too broken to fight us for control. Aunt Patricia stood in their living room like judgment incarnate, her church dress and pearl earrings hiding a heart that calculated in dollars rather than devotion. She'd flown all the way from Mississippi not to check on her niece, but to coordinate Maya's destruction. Maya stepped into the room before Cole could stop her. Hello, Aunt Patricia. Both conspirators spun around. Patricia's face went white, but Marcus just smiled like he'd been expecting this. Maya, honey. Patricia's voice carried false sweetness. I was just what? Discussing how to destroy my marriage and steal my husband's company. Maya's voice stayed level, but her eyes blazed. Or were you explaining to Marcus how you manipulated a heartbroken girl into a marriage you planned to use against her? You don't understand the bigger picture. I understand perfectly. Cole appeared beside Maya, his arms sliding around her waist. I understand that you've been planning this since before Maya and I ever met. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and your own happiness? What did you choose and why? Share your experience below. As Maya's aunt revealed the extent of her manipulation, how she'd orchestrated everything from the cheating boyfriend to the marriage arrangement, Cole's response was swift and ruthless. But what Maya didn't know was that he'd made a decision that would either save them both or destroy the love they'd finally found. He had a choice: save his company and lose his wife, or lose everything and trust that love was worth more than an empire. You have 48 hours, Marcus said, straightening his tie like he was leaving a normal business meeting instead of breaking into someone's home to threaten their marriage. Dissolve the marriage quietly, and we'll make sure Maya gets a nice settlement. Fight us, and she gets nothing when the fraud investigation destroys you both. Maya felt Cole's arm tighten around her waist. His whole body was coiled like a spring ready to snap. Get out of my house. Cole's voice was deadly quiet. Think carefully, Cole. You're one board meeting away from losing everything your father built. Is she really worth that? After they left, Maya and Cole stood in their living room, staring at each other. The silence stretched until Maya couldn't stand it anymore. You have to dissolve the marriage. Cole's head snapped up. What? Your company employs 12,000 people. You can't let them lose their jobs because of me. Maya, I knew this was temporary when I signed the papers. I'll be fine. She was lying, and they both knew it. The thought of losing him now, after finding him, felt like drowning. Cole crossed the room in 3 steps, his hands framing her face. Do you honestly think I'm going to choose money over you? It's not just money. It's your life's work, your legacy, everything you and Sarah built together. Something shifted in Cole's eyes at the mention of his first wife. Sarah would tell me to fight for what matters, and you matter more than any company. Cole, no, I'm not losing you. Not to Marcus, not to your aunt, not to anyone. His thumbs brushed her cheeks. I'd rather lose everything else than lose this. 2 days later, the press conference room buzzed with anticipation as Cole prepared to make the announcement that would either establish their partnership or expose them as the greatest corporate scandal in Seattle history. Maya watched from the back of the room, her heart in her throat. They'd agreed on the strategy, but seeing Cole up there alone, facing a room full of reporters and cameras, made her stomach twist with anxiety. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. Cole's voice carried the authority that had built an empire, but Maya could see the tension in his shoulders. I called this conference to address rumors about my recent marriage and its impact on Harrington Industries. The room held its breath. It's true that my marriage was arranged quickly due to circumstances in my father's will. It's also true that I initially saw it as a business necessity rather than a personal choice. Maya's chest tightened. This was it, the moment that would define everything. But what I didn't expect was to fall in love with the most remarkable woman I've ever met. What I didn't plan for was finding a partner who challenges me, supports me, and makes me better than I ever thought I could be. What would you sacrifice for love? Your career, your family's approval, your financial security? Tell me what matters most to you. As Cole stepped up to the microphone, Maya watched from the back of the room, her heart in her throat. He was about to tell the world that their marriage had been a business arrangement, but also that it had become the most real thing in his life. What she didn't expect was his final words. And now I'd like you to meet the woman who's not just my wife, but my business partner and the new CEO of Harrington Industries. She went from nobody to somebody overnight, but the real transformation was learning that she'd been somebody all along. The boardroom erupted in questions as Maya walked to the front of the room. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted, but all she could see was Cole's face, proud, determined, and completely sure of his decision. Mrs. Harrington, a reporter called out, "What qualifies you to run a tech company?" Maya stepped up to the microphone, thinking of every person who'd underestimated her, every moment she'd been told she wasn't enough. I've spent my life solving problems with limited resources. I understand what it means to fight for what matters. And I understand that a company is only as strong as the people who believe in it. Is it true your marriage was arranged for business purposes? Cole moved beside her, their shoulders touching. Our marriage began as a business arrangement, yes, but it became something real because we chose to make it real. Love isn't about how you start. It's about how you choose to continue. 3 months later, Maya stood in her corner office, looking out at the Seattle skyline that had once intimidated her. The corner office with her name on the door overlooked the same view, but now it looked like home, like possibility, like everything she'd never dared to dream. Harrington Industries had not only survived the scandal, it had thrived. Maya's fresh perspective and Cole's experience had created something stronger than either could have built alone. The board that had once questioned her qualifications now fought over who got to present her ideas first. Knock, knock. Cole appeared at her doorway holding 2 cups of coffee and wearing the smile that still made her heart skip. "Don't you have your own office, Mr. Harrington?" "Dull, but the view's better in here." He set the coffee on her desk and pulled her into his arms. "Besides, I like watching my wife conquer the business world." Maya laughed, standing on her toes to kiss him. "Your wife has a conference call with Tokyo in 10 minutes. My wife is brilliant and sexy and completely out of my league." He lifted her onto her new desk, his hands reverent on her thighs as Seattle sparkled below them. "CEO suits you," he murmured against her lips. "Everything suits me when I'm with you," she replied, pulling him closer. 6 months ago, she'd been a broken bride fleeing a wedding. Now she was building an empire with the man who'd seen her worth before she believed in it herself. "Maya." Cole's voice was serious suddenly. "I have something for you." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. Maya's breath caught. "We got married in a courthouse with strangers as witnesses because we had to, but I want to marry you again because I choose to, because I want the whole world to know that you're mine and I'm yours." The ring wasn't the simple band from their courthouse wedding. This was a diamond that caught Seattle's light and threw it back like promises. "Cole, marry me again, Maya. For real this time. For love." What does it feel like when someone sees your potential before you do? How do they help you see yourself differently? Share your transformation story. As they christened her new office with kisses that tasted like forever, Maya realized she had one more surprise for Cole. News that would change their partnership in the most beautiful way possible. A year ago, she'd been a broken bride fleeing a wedding. Today, she was planning one that would mean everything. "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air of Maya's office like the best kind of surprise. Cole's hands stilled on her waist, his eyes widening as the meaning sank in. "Pregnant?" Maya nodded, suddenly nervous. They'd never talked about children, never planned for this possibility. "I found out this morning." "I know we didn't plan." Cole's kiss cut off her words. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright with tears she'd never seen before. "We're having a baby. We're having a baby." He spun her around the office, both of them laughing like teenagers. When he set her down, his hands immediately went to her still flat stomach. "A baby," he whispered like he was testing the word. "Our baby." 6 months later, the garden wedding overlooked Puget Sound. Southern magnolias imported specially for the occasion, mixing with Pacific Northwest evergreens. A perfect blend of who they'd been and who they'd become. Maya's mama had flown in from Mississippi, tears streaming down her face as she watched her daughter marry for love instead of convenience. Maya wore white this time, a flowing dress that accommodated her growing belly, her skin glowing with happiness instead of heartbreak. Cole waited at the altar in a tuxedo that cost more than most cars, but his eyes held the same wonder they'd carried the day she told him about the baby. "Dearly beloved," the minister began, but Maya barely heard the words. All she could see was Cole. All she could feel was their child moving inside her. All she could think was how impossible this happiness had seemed a year ago. "Do you, Cole Michael Harrington, take Maya Elizabeth Davis Harrington to be your wife, to love and to cherish, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for as long as you both shall live?" "Edo." His voice carried across the garden like a promise. "Again and always." "And do you, Maya Elizabeth Davis Harrington, take Cole Michael Harrington to be your husband, to love and to cherish, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for as long as you both shall live?" Maya's voice was strong and clear. "I do. For real this time." Their kiss tasted like champagne and forever, witnessed by everyone who mattered and none of the people who tried to tear them apart. Marcus Chun had been fired from a board. Aunt Patricia had returned to Mississippi in disgrace. The people who tried to use their love as a weapon had learned that some things are stronger than manipulation. That night, as Cole traced gentle circles on her growing belly, he whispered promises to both his wife and unborn child. vows more sacred than any spoken in church or courthouse. "I love you," he said against her skin. "Both of you." Maya's hand covered his. "We love you too." Through the bedroom windows, Seattle sparkled like scattered diamonds, and Maya thought about the girl who'd fled Mississippi with nothing but heartbreak and determination. That girl had become a woman who'd found her worth, claimed her power, and built a love story that nobody could destroy. So tell me, do you believe in second chances? In love growing from the most unlikely soil? What would you do if someone saw your worth before you believed in it yourself? If this story of finding love in the most unexpected places touched your heart, smash that like button and subscribe for more stories that prove love isn't about being rescued. It's about being recognized. Comment below, what's the biggest risk you've ever taken for love? And remember, sometimes the best marriages start with the worst reasons, but they survive on the best ones.